So, welcome to our financial planning series where we're going to be sharing tidbits about how to structure your financial life such that in the next 10, 20 years, you'll be able to look back and give yourself a nice pat on the back. You did great things with your money. So, my name is Tiro and I'm here today with Brian. Brian is our expert for the day simply because he's quite an expert at estate planning, at drafting wills. He's been doing it for quite a while. He's been a financial planner for over 10 years. So I personally tend to trust his opinion quite a lot. I tend to lean on it quite a bit as well. Thank you for being here today, Brian.
Well, thanks for having me, too. It's such a pleasure to be joining you.
Great stuff. So wills seems to be a bit of a taboo topic in Botswana. Why do you think that is? Why do you think a lot of people don't have wills?
It's quite interesting because the way I see it, it seems as if we as a nation are migrating or developing from what we used to do back in the cultural days, where we know that the old folks will take care of things if someone passes away. They know what to do with the belongings of a person.
Right.
And there is a lot of reluctance for people to acquire new knowledge on why should I have a will in the first place so that I can be able to deal with those particular assets. And to a certain level, there's also a confidence in that ignorance as well, of not knowing what should be done.
So basically, we've grown more complex as human beings, as Botswana, as Africans, and so have our estates. And because of that complexity now, we need something that's in black and white. I trust this is what you're saying. Something that's in black and white that is going to clearly guide how we distribute our assets upon our passing.
Correct.
Who actually needs a will? Is there anybody out there basically who does not need a will?
That is a very important question you've just asked. Now, legally, when you own belongings, you are entitled to write a will. But what rules the whole thing in Botswana is basically whether you lived your life as an ordinary tribesman or you lived your life within the city and not as a tribesman.
Right.
And so you will find that the tendency is an estate can be distributed the old traditional way if you're an ordinary tribesman, regardless of the size of the estate.
Right.
But the moment you have had the city life and you have opened bank accounts and you've used this modern technology, all of a sudden now you need to be using a will to be able to distribute your estate.
Right.
Now, if you don't do that, what then happens now is that your estate is registered at the Master of the Court, and then they use the law to try and distribute your belongings to whoever is left behind. So when you're looking at the question of who needs a will, you want to be making sure that if you are not an ordinary tribesman and you've been in the city for a while, you need a will. If you have belongings and you've got dependents who you care about in terms of what you leave behind for them, then you definitely need a will in place. But most importantly, if you've got an even bigger size of estate and your wealth is large, you want to consider putting a will in place.
I'm Tiro, and I'm married, right? What is the importance of a will to my spouse?
With regards to relationships, it's not only important as to whether you have a spouse or not,
Right.
but if actually you are in a relationship. Imagine, in Botswana, we have this common tradition of people staying together for a very long time, and they can actually start a family. And clearly, in that staying together, you have acquired wealth together, you have acquired possessions together. When you die, the process is not as easy as ABC. You are staying together and therefore you take that, I take that. No, it's quite complicated. So you find that for someone who has been staying together with somebody, but there is nothing that legally says they are bound to be together in terms of their estate, the other person who has passed away can easily have their assets be distributed to their children and their siblings and their relatives, maybe excluding the mother of the children. If you're talking about people who are married, it matters to know whether you're married in community of property or outside of community of property. So this is very important because spouses are not very clear on what will happen. The tendency is to believe that, this is my life partner. We've been together for a while, so definitely everything will go to her. But that is not the case, especially when it comes now to a scenario of being married out of community of property as well as just staying together without any legal union.
And this is actually a very important conversation that needs to be had. It's something that is important for a married couple to know, and that is something you're definitely going to dig out when you're doing your will.
Yeah, I agree with you, because you find the default in Botswana, if you never signed an article, is to be married out of communal property. People are not aware. Some people might actually have to realize at that time that, oh, we were acquiring assets together, but we're not married in communal property. And if you are not, then the more important it is to make sure that the will is in place, because you might not be able to safeguard that estate to go to only your spouse or your children, but it might go to other people that you didn't intend to. And remember, this is very important, because in a scenario of death, it can be just one side of the relationship passing away, or it can be both. And that is more important now when it comes to the children.
What is the importance of a will to my children? How can I safeguard my children by having a will?
The first thing that is important is whether your children are minors or not. So you want to look at a scenario where if you pass away and your children are minor, you and your spouse both pass away. That's the first worst case scenario. And there was no will. The courts will look at the situation and identify every other biological child that existed out there so that they get an equal share. Right. And some people do have skeletons in the closet.
It does happen.
You might never know. Yeah? That's number one. And then number two, these minor children are not yet of age to actually get ownership of these assets. So they will be kept under the guardian fund with the government, and they will be given when they turn 18, and that alone is a mess on its own, because we have seen 18-year-olds inherit millions, and within a year, kapush, the money is gone.
Yeah.
So it's important that you realize that what you've acquired as assets is your legacy, and you want to make sure that you don't want to continue the cycle of poverty within your legacy. More importantly as well, with regards to children, you want to make sure that if they are minors, you agree on who should be the guardians of the children. That is a very important factor. It's only when you do a will that you realize that you have to nominate someone who you think can look after your kids whilst they use the assets that you left behind. If you leave it to chance, a voucher will always come along. Now, I'm not saying all the families out there have got vouchers, but that's the tendency. And you will never know whether those people have the interests of the children at best or not. Will they go to the schools that you have taken them to? Would they be given the same lifestyle that you would have given them? And if you want to at least have a say in that, your best chance of doing that is just to make sure that you have a will in place. Most importantly, the tendency for people is to think that they can just download a template and fill in the bits and then that is it. I've sat down with intelligent people who are well educated, and to my surprise, when you interpret to them what they have put in the template that they have downloaded and tell them this is what you have actually said in a will, they were not aware that these are the kind of things that they are saying by just simply filling in a template. So that's why you need to have an expert have a look at it, and so that you can get the correct opinion on it, and you know what the will itself truly represents, your ideas and your wishes. And more importantly, it's valid. It's going to be structured in a manner that is valid.
Thank you so much. So basically, if you've got your children's best interests at heart, you need to do a will.
Yeah.
You need to be able to elect a guardian. You need to be able to say who gets which assets, and you need to be able to say how, in what form do they get them, because nobody knows your children better than you do. And you can only do that while you're alive through a will.
And you've actually reminded me of something. There is a tendency, an amazing situation where I met somebody who said, look, I've got lots of children and I've got these assets, and I can't distribute each and every one to them because there are so many children. And they were stuck, and they thought they didn't need a will because they didn't know how to distribute so few assets to so many children. But again, you see, you can actually have a will that allows you to form a trust. Those assets are moved into a trust. The trust looks after the assets for the care of the children in equal shares. And so there is nothing to worry about as long as you have a will in place.
Right.
But if you don't have a will, again, it's a problem.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's been very informative. If you're listening to this and you do not have a will, you need to get your will in place. See an expert. See a financial planner about doing your will. and most importantly, get it done now, get it done today, as soon as you can. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Cheers.